Hi there, it's Adrian here, my guise as the embodied guitarist. Now, what does that mean? It's basically me combining my work as a teacher of the Alexander technique with my love of the guitar, which I'm sure you share, which is why you're watching this. If you're not familiar with the Alexander technique, it's essentially a way of teaching you to use yourself well. All the classical music colleges have Alexander teachers on site to help their students, musicians, avoid and overcome playing injuries related to repetitive strain. I'm sure you've heard the idea that musicians often called the athletes of the small muscles. So, what I'm going to discuss today, and I've got Luke here to help me, is basically how to sit with your guitar. Now, I make no apologies for this. This is going to be very detailed. You won't believe how detailed it can be to get your derriere onto a chair. But there's a reason for this, and it's all to do with the Alexander technique and how we use ourselves, how we move, and the quality we move in. Because it's not about sitting correctly. I'm sure I'm probably going to title this video "The Correct Way to Sit," because that's what people expect to see. But I'm really actually more interested in how freely you sit, because you want to play freely, you want to move freely. So come on over, Luke. Come and get yourself in shot. Now, can I get you to begin with to maybe face this way, so you're side on?
Yep.
Okay, let me come back a bit so I'm in shot. So I'm going to teach you a little bit first about the human skeleton. Now I want to keep the anatomy to a bare minimum, but we need to know a little bit about how the human organism works, if you want to call it that. So the human skeleton, believe it or not, can't stand up. And that sounds ridiculous, but if you take all the postural reflexes out of the way, it's just a pile of bones on the floor. So you've got this incredibly unstable structure. On top of this unstable structure, we have 5 kilograms of weight of the head. Now, this is important because you'll actually, Luke's had Alexander lessons before, so he's probably not going to behave as most people will. So I'm going to probably have to ask him to fake movement later because he's already trained this out of himself. But it's really important to understand how the head balances on top of the spine and what to watch out for when you go to move, what happens and how you basically undo the quality of balance of the head and top of the spine, which everything underneath has to then compensate for. So the head balances on top of the spine, just under the level of the earlobe, kind of under the level of the nose as well. That's the top of your spine. And the centre of gravity for your head is a bit forward and above of that. So your head naturally just wants to roll forward slightly over that joint. And the neck muscles need to be very fast acting. There's a lot of fast twitch fibres in the neck because it's 5 kilograms of weight at the top, they need to adjust and readjust all the time. What we generally find is when people go to move, and particularly when they go to sit because they think their balance is off, the startle reflex kicks in, and we tighten the neck muscles, therefore the whole balance of the whole structure is gone completely because everything underneath has to start compensating and everything basically stiffens up. So, we need to keep the neck muscles loose and free. In fact, what I'll do is I'm going to move the chair this way. Now, can I ask you to sit badly? You know what I'm talking about. You didn't do it. You didn't do it. So what most people do is they pull on their neck. They go like this. Now do it. Most people will start pulling on their neck halfway down. He's so trained out of the system he can't do it now. So people arrive like that. Now, there's 2 reasons why people arrive like that. One is they think they're off balance, so they react. 2, you have an incorrect association of what sitting even is. What most people think of sitting is collapsing towards the lower surface. So on the way down, people start to collapse and they arrive pre-collapsed. So you need to change your thought process of what it is you're trying to achieve. So if I just get you back up again. Instead of going to sit, reframe it as you're going to squat. Now, you'll fail to squat because there's a chair in the way here. But you will behave differently. You'll stay present with yourself. So instead of just falling towards the lower surface, pre-collapse, you'll stay. So if I do this with Luke here, you stay here, here, here. And if I could get him to stop for a moment, because he wasn't falling, he had the option to stop. He was in control all the way, and we can just carry on going. And at some point, into going to a squat, he can't get any lower. Chair's in the way. Now he can move back. Now, the most important part of this, that's the simple mechanics, and we hinge from the hip joints to do that. The hips go back, the knees go forward. Is actually what's going in your thinking. You want to really be aware of the space around you. You want to move your hips back into known space and your knees forward into known space. So you get this concertina effect that your legs fold underneath you. And you want to stay quiet in the mind. So the startle reflex is when the mind goes from one place to another. Now I can stand here, I can lift an arm and go, frankly, so what? It's not exactly difficult. Most people, when they go to sit, will react. So they'll worry where the chair is. They'll worry about their balance. And the moment they worry about that, the startle reflex kicks in. And then you've tightened the neck, and then everything below loses its freedom. So the neck-head relationship is a great barometer in to see if you reacted in some way. So let's get you back up again. Now, that's the trick again. Can you not care? Can you not don't aim for the chair? Assume the chair's not there. And can you stay totally cool? That just being here, stood up, minding his own business, so what? He stood there. Frankly, it's no big deal. But so is sending your knees forward and hips back. The mind stays quiet. You arrive unchanged. Now, in fact, you think he's now sitting. I don't. I think he's still stood up. Why do I think that? Because sitting and standing are the same activity of the torso. So if you literally had no legs, you would still be able to sit using the underside of your pelvis. They're called the sit bones. There's this kind of W shape underneath with the 2 points. Use those as the new heels for your torso. You're effectively still stood up because the sacroiliac joint, which might just be off camera eye, but it's not, but basically the base of the spine here, where you have the sacrum meeting your pelvis, that relationship, that pelvis to the bottom of the spine, is above both your hip joints and further down your sit bones. The bony part of your bottom you can feel if you're sitting on something firm. So it doesn't matter in the slightest to the torso which of the two places the weight bearing is going through, whether it's through the hips to the ground or through to your sit bones. You're effectively still stood up. So you want to consider being sat as being stood up, but on your backside. And keeping that sense of length up the back of the neck that we're always obsessed with in the Alexander technique. Now, what makes sitting harder than standing in reality, now that Luke's there, is we've taken the ankles and the knees and the hip joints out of the equation. So when we're stood up, we're very mobile and we like to wobble. And, you know, I might stand stiller, but, you know, we're movable. The moment you're sat down, you take a lot of that range of movement out of the equation. Now, standing and sitting is a movement activity because the skeleton wants to fall over, postural reflexes, adjusting, readjusting, you're in movement. You want to always be able to encourage that level of movement to be available. Now, some of the range of movement that's available is over the hip joints. You can shift forward and back. Sometimes one wants to lean forward a bit over the guitar instead of slumping from halfway up the spine. You keep the spine long, but you use the hip joint and hinge forward from there. That's an option. And just keeping it nice and light, that it's movable. Finding your ability to be dynamic still. And, you know, there's a certain amount of wobbling here. And I think this is one of the things that makes practicing harder. When we start playing, we wander around, we're more mobile. But when we're sat down practicing, we can get very rigid. So it's important to find that natural movement that's available. And I'd encourage you actually that, you know, particularly if you're playing with a metronome, to move to the metronome. It doesn't have to be much, it just keeps the tempo internalised with movements, a little dance, and then it just keeps it all free as well. Now, if I get Luke back up again, and face the chair this way. So come and stand this way again. Little thought, a lot of people, I'm going to grab the guitar, struggle with the action of just going down like that. They feel off balance. So you'll often notice when people go to squat, they'll put their arms out in front. It shouldn't really be necessary, but if some of the coordination's gone, fair enough. You can use the guitar actually as that counterbalance if you want. It's a way to help you with that squat. So you could grab your guitar first if you want. You can hold it out in front of you, and it's effectively a counterbalance. I mean, Luke doesn't need this personally, but I'm just giving you an option. So as the hips go back, you've still got that counterbalance, so you don't feel like you're going to fall back. Now you're on the chair, what happens next? Most people will play casual style with the guitar on the right knee. I don't encourage this for various reasons, one of which is you don't play stood up like that. So you're learning the mechanics of learning one way, and then you go and stand up and do everything's in a different place. There's no point having two different ways of playing. Not that it's wrong to play like this. I mean, if you play sat down a lot, you can. You know, particularly if you're an acoustic guitarist, not a problem. I think for electric guitarists, to use the classical guitar style, which is I bring the footstool that I've got here. I know it's off camera, but Luke puts his knee on it. Now, that is much closer to a standing up position. Admittedly, it's higher. It's not exactly the same, but it's closer. It's closer. I mean, if he was to stand up, I'm sure he probably wouldn't actually, and I know I don't, have the guitar quite so high. Not a problem that it is. Tom Morello has his guitar very high, so it's perfectly feasible. And if you're worried about looking cool, Tom Morello looks cool enough to me. Well, I admit I did want to be Jimmy Page when I was younger, but that's just not practical to have a guitar that far down. Sure you stay up. Yeah, so that's a lot more relaxed for the torso. You're not having to twist. The guitar's going to stay in the same place, and he's still movable. So he could still sway to the beat, whatever he's playing. Because that's the hard bit when we practice for a long time. We do get very, very rigid. Now, one of the things that's going to go wrong for everyone, me included, that I have to keep an eye on, is this idea of we go where our attention is. So he's all sat very nicely now. If he starts practicing, he's going to start looking at his left hand. So play a scale back and forth randomly. I haven't got a pick in your hand, but never mind. Start following your attention. Imagine you've been there for half an hour. This is what's going to happen. That's where you're going to end up. We all do it. We all do it. So the trick is to avoid that. Stay away from your guitar. There are two ways you can go about doing this. One is to have a mirror. Practice with a mirror in front of you. Especially if it's new material, you really need to see your fingers. You really need to know where they're going. Definitely employ a mirror wherever possible. The other option, if it's material you know better, but you have to glance every now and then, really open your visual awareness. Be aware of your peripheral vision. Because actually you can see more of your fingers on the fretboard than you realise. Now, obviously there's no great detail, but you can have a quick look at your fingers, get the detail, and move back, but still being aware of the peripheral vision. There's another advantage to this. That's really a more in-depth Alexander technique issue of the way we use our attention and awareness. And having a broader awareness helps us to be more aware of what we're doing as a whole. So it's not just about fingers. You know, you can keep aware of your posture, I further with poise, but you can be more aware of your posture if you've got a wider awareness in general. And using the peripheral vision is a trick in a way to actually make the mind itself be broader in its awareness. So it's very difficult to be concentrated in mind at the same time as being aware of your peripheral vision. And it helps you being aware of your left hand, because you've got a broader awareness in general, and your right hand, so that, you know, if you're focusing on legato on your left hand, for example, you're not suddenly finding yourself with the effort pinching really hard with the pick with the other hand. So now you've got an unusable right hand. So when the right hand now comes back in after legato playing, you've really messed up the coordination by not being aware of what you were doing with it in the first place. So it's just a trick with with the peripheral vision to not only be able to see the fretboard from time to time, you know, when you're not looking at it directly, but to change the quality of your awareness to feel more inclusive of what you're doing. Okay, is there anything else I want to add to that? Have you got any thoughts, Luke? You normally practice with the guitar on the other leg, actually, don't you?
Yeah, I normally practice down here in a weird, kind of relaxed straddle type position.
What's the two differences feel like to you if you go back to more classical position, which I do encourage? And I should add here, I'm encouraging this not because it's right as such, but I have a reason I offer these ideas is because the people that come to see me for help as an Alexander teacher are in pain. So whatever I can do to help them get some advantage to make it easier on their body, to minimise the chance of being in pain, that's my raison d'etre for encouraging people to do certain things. I know it's not cool to be in classical position, but you're at home and no one's watching you practice. Don't worry about it. Do you find that equally comfortable? I know you normally do it the other way.
Yeah, over a period of time I feel really twisted because I feel, so my feet are usually squared off with whatever my workstation is, and I slowly bring my torso around to meet it without, well, you can't bring the lower body. So I cramp up on one side.
Right.
My spine's a bit out of sorts.
And is that partly just because of the position, or is that also including the fact that your concentration's going into the guitar?
Yeah.
And there you go.
Yeah, that's
both.
So it's the position makes you
Twist in the first place,
to
and then on top of
see
that,
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, then you get the going towards it.
Yeah.
Because that's where your concentration is. And if you go back to classical, does that feel completely alien, or you go, actually, that's fine. It's not that different to when I'm stood up.
Yeah, it feels good. My left hand feels freer, like it's not.
Yeah.
Commuting to work. I almost feel weird that I'm not contorted at first, so it takes me a while to settle into it. Like, I'm kind of in this neutral place instead of this.
Yeah, because
crunch.
One of the themes of the Alexander technique is essentially to not disturb yourself in any activity. And what you're describing there is your natural way or your habitual way of wanting to play is a way that disturbs you. Before you've even started playing, you've disturbed yourself. But actually, can you be neutral and not care about the guitar? And then when you bring the guitar into it, you're not having to deal with two things, the disturbance and the fact that you're doing mechanically complex thing of playing the guitar. So you're happy then?
Yeah.
I'm going to do a separate video on this, but I'm going to mention another thing. Bar chords are a lot easier like this because of the weight of the arm, which I'm going to get into in another video. But having this arm free, now this arm's completely free if you bring the arm up to the fretboard, you've got a lot more range of movement available of this arm. And the way the arm works and the weight of it actually becomes part of your technique. But I'm afraid you're going to have to look out for that one, so I'm not going to be covering it here. So yeah, I think we're good to go. So I do encourage you all to sit in a classical style and be more mindful of the way how you got to the chair in the first place. And while I think about it, I do have a blog on sitting, and it's got a really good diagram of how that relationship of the sit bones and the pelvis and the bottom of the spine. So just so you can see that picture, and I'll put that in the description below. All right, we're good to go. You happy, Luke?
Yep.
All right. Sayonara.